I want to talk a little bit about these Rorqual changes, but I want to talk about the Rorqual changes first by talking about the previous Rorqual changes. I have a video that I made on it was posted August 12th, 2016. So 2016, it's entitled Rorqual Changes and Industrial Playstyles. I have it sped up to like, we'll do 1.25 so that way people can even understand what I'm saying. But I kind of want to walk through this a little bit because I think that what was being talked about and how that change happened and played out, and pieces of this video apply to now, or at least is worth keeping in mind as we're talking about what's happening now. All right. Oh, hold on.
It's not actually one of the activities I've ever picked up, so much so that I don't.
I just said I'm out mining and I don't normally mine.
But I guess the question is not how am I mining, but why am I mining? And the reason why is because I've been trying to kind of get in touch with my inner miner industrialist because of the most recent changes, specifically the changes to the Rorqual. So why is the Rorqual changes important? Well, the Rorqual changes represent...
Now, remind you, the changes that I'm talking about is the fact that Rorquals used to have off-grid boosts inside of a POS, and this was being changed to the way that Rorquals are now. A bit quiet, or it turned up. How am I getting that camera work so smooth? I'm orbiting, and I have the focus on the rock, and I'm orbiting.
Something that is very, very rare in Eve, which is they are completely removing a certain playstyle from the game. Now, this is something that a lot of people like to say that CCP is doing to them, and there's been a lot of pieces of game styles or specific tactics of a game style that has been removed in the past. But this is the first time that a full play style has been more or less removed. So let me explain. The Rorqual is an industrial command ship. It is actually the largest industrial ship in the game, and it was originally designed to be kind of this mobile N-tier industrial platform, right? And this is like back in the day when the capitals had these kind of grandiose ideas that like a Titan was a mobile battle station, and a carrier, or sorry, a mothership was a mobile, like you could live out of it with the clone bays.
Motherships are super carriers, by the way.
And in the same sort of way, the Rorqual was kind of the industrial mode of this. You could load up all of your ships into it, jump out somewhere, dump all your dump clones to it, and you could suddenly have a swarm of people with just this as its home base. And that's a pretty cool idea, and that's what people kind of rallied behind. But
by the way, I want to pause it right there and point out. So like the idea of the Rorqual originally was to be this like all-in-one mining platform. It had a clone bay. People could load their things up. It could jump out. People could pop out and start mining, which is what, like, when I'm looking at the changes now, what I see is CCP attempting to go back to the original kind of like design document for Rorquals, right? And so this reminds me of the jump portal that we see. So if there's an industrial jump portal, then that kind of reinforces the idea that the Rorqual becomes the hub of a mining team, right? The foreman of a mining group.
Over time, it drifted away from that. And like anything else in Eve, over time it became more and more stale and stagnant. But unlike all of the other ships that have been rebalanced at this point, the Rorqual hasn't. It hasn't been rebalanced in a long time. In fact, there's a lot of problems with it. First of all, a lot of what has made it special has actually been removed. So, or not removed, but it's no longer special. For example, clone bays. One of the special things about Rorquals is that they can create jump clones. But with the change to standings not being required for jump clones, that removed kind of one of the things that made them sort of special. You could create them out of nowhere without having sovereignty. Another good example is compression. It used to be that compression pretty much had to be done within the Rorqual, but then they added it to POSes. And when they make these changes, Rorqual pilots would complain. And
so just remember two things, right? And this is kind of one of the important things. What I'm suggesting in this video, and we have to keep in mind, is that for a long time, compression basically required a Rorqual, but jump clones did too. if you didn't have high standings, very high standings with a NPC corporation, you didn't get to make jump clones unless you had sovereignty, because there wasn't structures, there were only posses. So the only way you could generate a jump clone was by going to a sovereignty outpost, or having enough standings with the NPC faction, or a Rorqual. So that's kind of interesting. And then, like I said, compression used to be pretty much relegated to the Rorqual. And I think posses have always had the compression array or whatever. But like, the idea is that it's supposed to be that they provided these services one by one. Those services were being provided more generally, and so there's a hint in the changes that we're seeing right now of like trying to recapture those things that the Rorqual was supposed to be so good at, or be the thing that was special about them. Again, but to be clear, I'm not necessarily saying that the changes are good. What I'm saying is that it's better. I think it's useful to us to crawl into the skin of like what the Rorquals are supposed to be from CCP's point of view, to better understand why they think that these changes are good, and therefore what kind of feedback, what kind of adjustments would capture our concerns, and while at the same time addressing CCP's interests. And I have some ideas, spoiler, but we'll go into that in a little while.
And they would always say, well, we want to do something more with the Rorqual, but we can't yet. We don't know what it is. And they've always said that, even like during the carrier rebalance, when they're rebalancing, they rebalance every other capital. And they said that they can't do the Rorqual yet. And the reason why was because of the boosting, right? So the idea is that one of the biggest functions of the Rorqual is that it has an industrial core mode, where it suddenly becomes super high boosts for mining, and helps everybody within the fleet, within the system. Or, well, yeah, within the fleet. So, but the problem is that mining is largely AFK, and these boosters only get their value out of it because of the fact that they can sit in a safe position and be in this mode. And so when all of the other boosts were taken out of posses, the Rorqual alone was left behind, as to not disrupt that playstyle. But there was the idea that it would be changed eventually, and it seems that eventually it's actually come. Now, I want to be clear before I go any further. I do not think that this is a bad change. I'm not arguing that this change shouldn't happen. But I think that it is important to think about these things when we are navigating through these changes, right? And CCP has to think about these things as they design these things, as they design these features. So, so for instance, I have a friend of mine who sees himself as a foreman of an industrial organization in Nullsec, and that is his game style. That is his gameplay. That's the reason why he plays Eve. Whereas many people might want to be a pirate, or many people want to be an emperor, or you know, whatever. This guy wants to be a foreman, and a real foreman. So he's got his people, his friends that help him out and all that stuff, and he has services that he provides those people. And as a foreman, he can provide foreman links to them. And so he entices his miners, people to come and support, to be in his area, because he can provide these boosts. And the problem is that he has a job, and so he has to go and do real world, and so where people would say, oh, well, he can still boost. The answer is no, he can't, right? Because that's just not an option. He can't boost in time zones that he's not active in anymore. And many people would argue that that's a good thing. And in a lot of ways it is. But to him, to these players, this is incredibly disruptive to their gameplay. And this is important, because these are the guys that make empires tick, right? Like,
it's funny that while this is like almost in exactly the opposite situation, right? This group of players, these foremans, largely their gameplay did get rather disrupted. Now, spoiler alert, as we talk about this, think about, or while I talk about what needs to happen, think about Athenors, which came shortly after this video was made. And you'll see kind of where the pieces fall into play. But I can't remember what else I was going to say.
Combat pilots are great. You need them in order to take space and be able to hold space, you know, and you know, whatnot. But these guys, these industrial backbone guys, these fiddly people, the guys that we like to make fun of, the spreadsheets and space people, the people who are willing to go, that find mining and industry and all this stuff interesting. These are the guys that make the rest of us be able to have what we have. And so what I think
One of the funny things that's worth remembering about the original mining changes that these are in relationship to was that people were saying that the Rorqual would be insufficient. The buffs to the Rorqual would just die out. No one would use it because why would you take such an expensive thing into the belt just for these boosts and you know whatever that the 5-minute panic didn't matter because no one was coming to rescue them because nobody respects miners, which at the time it was absolutely correct. No one respected miners, but it was these changes that changed that perspective, right? And the change to Athanor's making moon mining requirement, right? Like it wasn't just that mining ships changed, people's perspective of mining changed. Miners were no longer seen by nullsec empires as literal ticks upon their hide. I'll get to what I think they should actually do, because I think that some people might find my idea very interesting.
I think is important is again, not that we can't have this change. I think it's required. I think it's a good change and needs to happen. And I think that what will happen is
this change needs to happen because overall, even back in 2016, the overall push has been to move away from AFK playstyles towards active playstyles. One of the things that's been really frustrating to me is people saying like, oh, this is just becoming like a Korean MMO grind. It's like, what the, first of all, what are you talking about? How is mining not a grind? How is missioning not a grind? And before you say, oh, well, they're making it so it's just more grind of the same thing. No, because there are other ways, like you can get more for stuff, right? Like, yes, missioning is kind of grindy, but then you can go into the abyss and you can do exploration sites and you can check out events. Like the whole point is that like, it's not about being grindy. It's about having things that involve actually doing stuff within the game and not grinding, doing the same thing over and over again. Disrupting your stagnation within your own play style. Like that's the whole, yeah, I don't see it as becoming more grindy. That's all I'm saying.
New kind of Rorqual pilot will emerge, and that's a good thing. But I think that CCP needs to remember this as they move forward. There's two big lessons that I can think of about this. One is that they need to remember that supporting their leaders, the softer skills, is important too. So hopefully they will give these guys something to crunch on, either in the form of better and additional tools to make it so that management isn't a giant pain in the butt, or perhaps maybe some extra cool things that comes from like industrial platforms. Because here's the thing, to him it's not a gameplay, it's a service. It's a service that he provides, and perhaps if he can provide it through a structure, then that would be okay. But effectively, you can't just think of it as, well, you can just do it on grid now, because that is an
this was before refineries
thing, and there is no dead replacement for that game style. Now, the second thing that we need to remember about this is as we move into other PvE experiences, we have to remember always that as we improve these features, as we think about ways to fix mission running or make mining interesting, you have to remember that there are in fact people who currently enjoy the playstyles as they are. In the same way as when Null was changed, there was a lot of people that were disrupted, because whether or not you argue that it's a better system and whether or not you argue that NullSec is more vibrant and more alive than it was prior to in Dominion, it is still true that for those who existed on the old system are noticeably hurt by it, and understandably so. So as we build new features, as we correct other things like mission running, for instance, if you just fix mission running by quote-unquote making it harder in order to just try to break up the brainless attitude of it, like if you decide, okay, the problem with mission running is that it doesn't require any thought, and this is a good example because they actually did this with the drone changes, right? They didn't like the fact that drones, it was a not thinking process, you just AFK'd and all that stuff, and so they made it so that drones can be aggressor, that rats changed their aggression so that way drones were still vulnerable. That change was to quote-unquote make it harder or make it more interesting, and I think it was successful at some to a certain extent. But my point is that as you make more changes, if we do propose more changes as we move into PvE, we also need to remember that there are people who are not interested in risking their ship every single time. There are some people that just want to grind on boars, or somebody who just wants to make red crosses become, or red triangles become white Rex, right?
I saw a great Reddit thread, which I'm probably not a great Reddit thread, but an interesting Reddit thread today that I'll probably reference again in a little bit. But one of the good comments that I got out of it was somebody was like, yeah, exactly this. I I don't play Eve to like maximize my whatever. I play it to fart around in space in a spaceship and have fun. Like I just do level 4 missions or whatever, right? Like you got to remember, there's a lot of people that don't play this game competitively. They just play it as a fun spaceship game to go fly around.
There has to be some sort of playstyle for that as well. Now, it can be lower tier and then upper, better stuff added on. Like, for instance, if they reworked level 5 missions and brought them back to high sec, and
this
then
also
added
before
a lot
Abyss,
of that
by the way,
interesting content to that, so that way people who still grind level 4 missions can still grind level 4 missions, but now there's this better thing that they can do too. Now you're not killing a playstyle. I don't think that was possible with this current feature, because it simply was a non-healthy playstyle that was...
All right. I think we get the point. So, basically, again, what I wanted to do there is just show off the similarities and differences between those changes and what was happening now, and to keep in mind kind of the entire relationship with the Rorqual. So I kind of reviewed this video earlier, and I thought that it would be fun to bring it back up a little bit to talk about. So I think that all of this is to say, like, to all of the guys, I saw that there's a very like kind of mask off Reddit thread, which I think is actually the same one, where this guy who's labeled from Goon Swarm says that this issue isn't just goons, and that like he's a multi-Rorqual pilot, and it's really the fact that they've invested, like they feel like they've built up towards the Rorqual, finally achieved it, and now that achievement has been cheapened, and that's the thing that they don't like. And unfortunately, to people who agree 100% with that statement, I have to say this: the response that has existed in EVE Online since well before I came in, right? In fact, this response is 12 years old. Just throwing that out there. So playstyles change. Things become more or less effective. Skills do not get reimbursed unless something is absolutely removed. Your playstyle will be affected on a long enough timeline. And if you're going to be happy with calling out everyone else who wants to whine about it, then guess what? You too will be called out for whining about it. This is something to adapt to. There may be some problems with the design, absolutely. But understand that EVE changes. Complexity increases. We all struggle. And you know what? If you're not good enough to evolve, then somebody else will. That's it. That's what I got to say about that. Also, yeah, bring back 6 guard. All right. I think I made my point. Hold on, I'll post that link too. All right. Like, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry that your playstyle got disrupted. Maybe your playstyle was out of whack. Maybe you had a good couple of years. Anywho, I'm sure that's not going to piss anybody off. So let's turn that around and talk about what I think might be able to be done about the Rorqual. Because I have a couple of ideas, just little ideas I want to throw out there. Let me see if I can pull it up, because I had a chat with somebody where I was discussing this, and I think I came up with a couple, because we were going back and forth about this, and I think we came up with some interesting ideas. So somebody online was saying that what the problem that happened was that two teams both nerfed the Rorqual without consideration of the other, right? Like, one guy makes the Rorqual mindless, and the other guy introduces waste. And so now they just got a double nerf. And while I don't believe that that's what happened, I do think that it brings up a really interesting point. So, hey, Pyrophobic, thank you so much for... Oh, Nolan, thank you so much for gifting that tier 1 sub to Pyrophobic. Okay, so... Yeah. Sorry, I want to take a step back, Remy. I agree with you on the whole, like, sorry, whoever said the Dust 514 thing. It is pretty funny. Like, adapt or die, learned about it in Dust 514. Dust 514 failed to adapt and therefore died. Anyway, so first of all, my first problem with compression is the fact that it feels bad, right? Hold on a second. Hey, Smile. Is that what is that? Like somebody mentions Dust 514 and suddenly Smile for the internet just shows up? Interesting. Anywho, so where was I? Shoot. What was I talking about? Oh, the compression. So my issue with compression is the fact that they made it a nerf when they simply did not have to, right? So I think, and I'm going to mix up some of these numbers because I don't want to double check them off the top of my head, right? But let's just say like the Orca compression is 95% and the Rorqual compression is 98%. And you get X amount of rocks from the rocks. Well, you could actually balance it such that the Rorqual compresses at an efficiency of 103%, and the Orca compressing at 100 or 95%, and or whatever 100. I messed up. 90% and 98% becomes 95% and 103%. Making it so that if you compress with a Rorqual, you actually are generating resources from nowhere to symbolize the better refinement processes and the time and cost and extra resources that go into the Rorqual on site processing the minerals as soon as they come out of the rocks. That actually could provide value. And now, because the Rorqual is generating resources, you now can justify allocating payment to that Rorqual to compensate for what they're doing. It makes that compression process a real job that has value to it that you can, put a number on and therefore provide to the Rorqual pilot for doing so. For God's sake, at least pay for the fuel that they're going to be consuming. And assuming that you reduce the yield slightly, if you need to, or you just accept a little bit of extra resources in the game, if they go through this lengthy process, as a reward for you to do the process. Don't make them cost fuel and take time and lose resources, right? Moon ore could still be below 100%, because you're right. Moon ore is special, and it may be impossible to compress that in a way that is non-wasteful, or that isn't wasteful. Why? Well, it has to do with, well, honestly, it may be possible. It may be the fact that the Rorqual can't, or the Orca can't compress Moon ore. That may be enough of a nerf to Moon ore compression that there doesn't actually need to be a difference in compression yield. But I don't know that one. I'm just saying that you could, without significantly adjusting the amount of resources that are coming into the universe, you could adjust the numbers such as the Rorqual feels like they're creating value instead of destroying it. And that seems like a good fucking idea, right? The one concern that I would have is if you are legitimately compressing things. I just realized the problem with what I just said. If you do it that way, then what would be the problem with compressing and refining it over and over again? I guess because you can't get 100% refining value out of it. So that way, like you don't lose anything in compression, but if you compress, refine, compress, or compress. Oh no, I guess you can't do that. So never mind. Doesn't matter. Yep. Make it so that they can, when they compress, they find new resources, because really what they're doing is they're throwing away the bullshit, and they're capturing more of the slag. They are, the resources that other systems, when you do an instant reprocess, it's very wasteful. If you want waste, put it there, right? Like, give the things that take the time, actually give a benefit, not less of a penalty. That's all I'm saying. The other thing is, Oh shoot, what was the other one? Oh, so let's talk about excavators. Okay. Here's the thing. Excavators got like the issue is that they have their mining yield significantly nerfed and they have the same uh waste as a new player or it's tech 1 crap, right? Let's not even call tech a new player. Worst case scenario. Without using offensive crystals. Like they have 100% waste 100% of the time. Question: why can't I compress all my carbon in my hold into diamonds? Well, that's what I'm saying. So, like, hold on, because it's a question of what compression is, right? The way I'm foreseeing it, I'm seeing it in this case, is that compression is not about just like literally packing it down. There are multiple stages of reprocessing, right? There are different, like the idea of mineral reprocessing and refinement is not a one-step process in the real world. And so in this sense, the compression process is actually a purification process, maybe would be a better way of thinking about it, where it's now distilled. There's a lot of the crap has been removed, and it's a question of how much of the good stuff gets salvaged. Yes, I understand that originally compression is mostly about size reduction and transportation. The real issue is that people used to just build guns and then reprocess the guns on the other side in order to move large amounts of minerals. Yeah, Remy May just said he used to use capital guns. All right, so here's what I recommend. I don't know which one is these that you want, but one of the two should happen. Either excavators should retain their old yield, but gain the inefficiency such that a Rorqual can hoover up a whole moon, but won't be any more efficient or won't get any more resources in the new world than they did today by solo hovering the entire moon themselves, because the resources got doubled and they waste half of it. But guess what? You got to hoover it all by yourself. And it was fast and it was easy and it's now yours. Or you reduce the yield, because now in this world you're saying, okay, well, the Rorqual pilot is more about supporting the fleet. So you're providing boosts, you are providing support, protection, and compression, hauling, all that stuff, right? So everybody else can just mine. Well, the thing is that this goes back to the Rorqual pilot feeling valuable too. So he wants to be out mining himself as well. Otherwise, don't have any mining drones at all. Like, just remove excavators, which I don't agree with. Like, let them mine themselves so that way they can feel like part of it, even if it's only as much or maybe even a little bit less than a dedicated miner. But the problem is, if you are at that high end, which hopefully you're using Rorquals for, that waste that's on the excavators is a problem either way. You don't want to optimize the situation by telling the Rorqual pilot that they have to be there, be working, but not mining. Therefore, you could make it so that the excavator drones have the same progression as standard mining lasers. Normal drones have 100% waste. Faction drones or T2 has 30-something% waste, and faction or excavators have 0% waste. And that way they have a reduced mining, but the Rorqual doesn't have to feel like they're destroying things just by being there. Like I said, I almost don't care which one of those two solutions you go for, but doing them both does seem problematic. Calico Jack Rackman, thank you for joining us. And everybody else do. Didn't you see that the day that they announced the changes, they had skill extractors on sale? That is true. Although I want to point out that, like, if you want to be cynical about that, them putting the extractors on sale is a benefit to you, right? Like, let's assume it. If they wanted to make the most amount of money out of the situation, they would make it harder to extract and cost more to get skill points back at the same time as making a buff, or sorry, a nerf, not the other way around. So by making it, I'm not saying anything about what they did do or anything like that, but I'm just saying like the argument that there's like some sort of sinisterness to the sale at the same time seems to not make sense. Like, even if you implied intent, it seems almost like a mercy. Imagine a little mini game where 3 sizes of ore goes across the conveyor. I said yesterday that I really want there to be, like, I would like the waste to be more towards good surveying. I was actually just joking around earlier that the prospect should get a bonus that makes it so that if they use a survey scanner, it scans all of the rocks in the whole system. Another thing they could consider is a third line of barge exhumer that works directly and only in conjunction with the rope for more mining. I mean, arguably, Valamir, that's what the Hulk is. Right? I mean, Hulks really are just like a mobile platform with giant mining lasers attached to it and nothing else. So yeah, that's my thoughts about what we could do about the Rorqual. At least a little bit. Doesn't fix everything, but those are that's my two ideas about what we could do about it. Already alpha, that's what I feel about the changes. That's the other side of that's the other funny thing that I heard. Like, they were talking about the riots or protests or whatever, and somebody was like, if you really want to protest, go ahead and unsub. It's like, how old is your information about the game? Are you telling me that you don't think that somebody can be both unsubbed and protesting in Jita at the same time? Come on. So, all right. Well, while we're on the topic, while I'm making everybody mad, I've got more things to make people mad about. Let's see whether or not this is, we've concluded this topic. A battleship size mining them. I mean, really, that's the excavator. Like, why or yeah, the excavators. Like, why would you, if you added another tier, then you would have to justify each of those tiers, right? Right now, you've got the cheap one and the expensive one between the two tiers of major mining ships. Well, the small agile one, the cheap one, and the expensive one. I'm sorry, Valamir. My job. Ruiner of dreams. It's easy to rage quit when you know your asset, skill points, and ISK will be there when you come back. Yeah, and on the other hand, it's easy for CCP to let you rage quit when they know that you'll come back if you feel like you can get something out of it.